If you get really good at my 2 hours, you probably don't need most of the rest of the weekend. But to get really good at my 2 hours, you need to be good at the rest of the weekend.
Ah, okay.
Because for you to be able to truly de-escalate, truly talk somebody down, truly have a presence that makes you less likely to be targeted.
Yeah.
And then if you are targeted, makes you more likely to be able to confidently de-escalate and handle the situation, have a conversation where you keep your emotional kind of toughness in check. You need to be good at fighting.
Welcome to the Second Plan A podcast, where we take hard-earned lessons from the mats and convert them into tools for navigating life's challenges. I'm Amber Hoover, and I'd rather stick to the plan.
How do you still not have that memorized?
I do, but I don't.
So you don't.
The stress, the pressure of the lights, of the cameras, of the action. I need to read it.
Okay. I'm Ryan. We're going to say things about things.
We're true to just how these podcast episodes have gone. I feel like recently we are on another 3rd, 4th, 5th, 8th plan A. So here we go. On this episode, we are digging into the idea of training from negative. We'll talk about why these scenarios matter and why you should practice them, but also where it goes wrong and how this applies to life off the mats. Are you ready?
Hard ready.
Yeah, baby. It is also Hard Ready Week. Happy Hard Ready Week, everybody. If you don't know what I'm talking about, Fit to Fight, we host a huge training weekend every year. This is our 10th and final year for the Hard Ready event series. So we're pretty excited. We're in the middle of rushing every which way, grabbing things from one center to take to another center to clear out our house, to bring to our house. It's a wild time, but we're pumped.
Yep. It's my favorite and least favorite time of the year.
We're also, that was the perfect way to say it. It is the best and worst time of the year. Anyway, so the idea of this episode stemmed originally from a video I saw posted where it was gun defense, and we could do a whole year's worth of podcasts on gun defense probably, and what's out there and what's real and what's not. But I wasn't even focused on the actual gun defense part of it. The problem for me was the post was talking about training from negative, fine, except the individual who was going to be making the defense waited till things were just like really bad. And I mean, not like tried some stuff, it didn't work out, ended up in a bad position. I mean, she was within arm's reach of the guy with the gun. The gun was not being pointed at her. He was yelling and telling her to get down on her knees from what I could gather. Again, the gun is not pointed at her as he's doing this. And so she gets down to her knees. He points the gun at her, and then she makes the defense.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, wow, that was, I mean, that wasn't training from negative. That was making terrible decision after terrible decision after terrible decision, and then somehow expecting that you could just go.
Yeah.
And so that bothered me enough to where I made a video about it, a quick reel, and I also wanted to make a whole podcast about it. So here we go.
Yeah, I mean, this has been something that I've kind of railed against for, I don't know, a decade or two probably.
Yeah.
And I do devote some time to it in the Modern Krav Maga book. Yeah, I saw the video right before I came in. It looks like the guy that's the gunman is probably the instructor. And she's following along. I mean, she's doing what she's being told to do.
Yes,
but,
of course.
But the reality is, like, from a training perspective, there's a lot wrong there. Yes, you should train from negative. The problem is when training from negative is 70, 80, 90% of what you're doing. From an instructor standpoint, a coach standpoint, an organizational standpoint, a system standpoint, whatever, I think you're failing your students, because you are more often than not, and oftentimes much more often than not, forcing them to ignore a whole lot of opportunities to escape, de-escalate, be first, in favor of the idea of training from negative. So like in the video that you are referencing, there were many, many chances for her to go physical, and obviously she thought it was a big enough, and I hate to hyperanalyze this, because she was just doing what she was told to do. But in this scenario, if it's a big enough threat that you're going to follow and go to your knees, and then decide to defend, it just doesn't make sense.
No,
You know,
no.
he's within arm's length. You know, she could make it. She could hit him. I mean, you know, like literally, probably could take off running. You know, depending on where they were in the idea of the scenario. But from a coaching standpoint, from a student standpoint, I am forcing my students to wait until the very last case, worst case scenario, and I think it's a mistake. I know it's a mistake. I don't think it's a
It's
mistake. I know it's a
absolutely, yeah.
mistake.
Not to mention, again, not pointing the gun at her. Why would we think he's threatening her with the gun down to the floor and then he's going to put her to her knees and then threaten her with the gun to her head?
Yeah.
Like that was probably a shot. And we don't say this much, but I doubt that situation happens the way they showed you. Okay, now you can make a defense. I don't think you could have made a defense at that point.
Right. Because what's the point in putting you
on your knees
on
and
your
then
knees?
yeah, exactly, yeah.
And that whole scenario, just as an aside, you know, I think it's kind of goofy. I mean, unless you're dealing with cartels on the regular, or you know, something like that, could it happen in a home invasion or whatever? Yes, but now we're talking about a situation where, you know, this is just murder, like this is just straight up assassination. And because otherwise, why are you gonna, from the front, why are you gonna put me on my knees and then point a gun at me?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I want to take even a little bit further of a step back and kind of look at something that we've been going back and forth with personally and then online as well. There was another video out. I don't want to get into that one, but it was the full padded suit, red man suit kind of thing, and whatever. And so, look,
a lot of people like those things.
Yeah, I know. I do not. But if you're training with that and doing whatever, like fine. But if you decide to take a video and put it on the internet for public consumption, you have decided, you have deemed it good enough, representative enough of what you do. And so,
or you're doing it just for engagement. And guess what?
There you go. You got engagement. You got it. So in this video, like we're harping on it, and I think it's justifiably so, because whoever posted it decided that this was representative of training from negative. And I disagree. I think that's not training. That's making a lot of really bad mistakes and then trying this cool, flashy move from the internet versus context, situation.
Yeah. Well, and my thing with people, you know, like with the padded suit thing, everybody's like, well, you don't know the whole class and whatever. Yeah, because they didn't post the whole class.
Exactly.
I can't judge what's not there.
Yeah.
I can only judge what I see. And what I see is what they chose to show me.
Right.
You know, and if you put it on social media, there is a tacit agreement that there is going to be discussion about it.
Yes.
You know, otherwise, block comments. You know, don't allow comments.
Right.
You know,
and then it'll just get shared across everybody's platform.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, my session for Hard Ready is going to be 90 minutes of my 2 hours is going to be on avoidance, body language, de-escalation. You know, it won't be much on the physical side other than maybe recognizing some physical cues and things like that. But I'm going to spend 90 minutes out of my 120 on how to avoid somebody getting their hands on me, how to de-escalate, how to talk somebody down, or how to be first.
Yeah.
As opposed to the actual act of fighting.
Well, right, because the majority of what we do on the mats, pretty much almost all of it, day in and day out, other than a few conversations, is already late.
Yeah.
It's already, quote unquote, from negative.
Here's the truth. My 2 hour session, if you get really good at that, you don't need the rest of the weekend.
Yeah. Wow. Rude to just throw the weekend for self-defense purposes, right? We're weirdos and we enjoy this stuff for fun and for recreation.
No, but here's the thing. If you get really good at my 2 hours, you probably don't need most of the rest of the weekend. But to get really good at my 2 hours, you need to be good at the rest of the weekend.
Ah, okay.
Because for you to be able to truly de-escalate, truly talk somebody down, truly have a presence that makes you less likely to be targeted.
Yeah.
And then if you are targeted, makes you more likely to be able to confidently de-escalate and handle the situation, have a conversation where you keep your emotional kind of toughness in check. You need to be good at fighting, you know? So learning how to grapple, learning how to box, kickbox, learning how to shoot, learning all these other things will make you much, much better at my 2-hour session. So being able to handle yourself physically really lends itself to being able to handle yourself on the non-physical side of things.
Yeah. And that's no matter what endeavor you've chosen, whether it's jujitsu for self-defense or more of a grappling wrestling
That's
art
not real.
versus striking. Depends what you look at.
Jiu-jitsu for self-defense is not real.
All right, everybody.
You can
Thanks, everybody.
You can just cut
Just
that one
over
and
there.
post that. Jiu-jitsu for self-defense is not a real thing.
I mean,
Nope.
okay. No,
Jiu-jitsu for self-defense is not real.
self-defense focused jujitsu. How do you say that in a sentence without it taking 1.5 years to say?
What do you mean?
I don't know.
You can have grappling for self-defense.
Okay. I see what you're going with this.
But jiu-jitsu for self-defense is not real. Not the way it's taught 90% of the time.
This is a whole
now.
different podcast.
But not really,
No.
because if jiu-jitsu were truly for self-defense, it would address these things we're talking about.
Yeah.
Jiu-jitsu is, I'm on my back, let me try to set up a triangle. Or I'm standing, let me drop to my back and kick you. Or try to sweep you. Or hope that you get into my guard. Like, I've been doing jiu-jitsu since 1998. I have never been to a jiu-jitsu class that talked about de-escalation, that talked about body language, that talked about pre-contact, that talked about preemption. Never.
Well, I don't know where I was going with that anymore. Okay, so on that note then, because I did...
But I could say the same thing about boxing.
Yeah, no, it doesn't...
Kickboxing, whatever.
Yeah. No, I know.
Like,
I'm just trying to... I know. I'm just trying to put a sentence together and it's not working.
Okay.
You're right. What I'm trying to say is... I don't even remember where this started. Anyway, I did want to talk about in the training from negative space, when you look at something, like, for whatever reason, I feel like it gets really misconstrued in the fight world versus jujitsu, where you do a lot of training from a bad position, but there's still a point where you can't escape anymore. Like, no one's teaching a triangle defense when it's fully locked in and they're grabbing your head and squeezing and you're about to pass out, because there's no defense from that.
Right.
And yet we think that if you're on your knees and the gun is facing you, like, there are situations where we think that, you can get out of anything, but that's just not true.
Well, but even in jiu-jitsu, the problem is that everybody will post a video, triangle defense, rear naked choke defense.
Sure.
But no, that's not what you're showing.
Yeah.
You're showing right before triangle choke how to defend.
Yeah.
Right before rear naked choke how to defend.
Yeah, if we were being honest about it's
right.
Not a triangle choke defense.
Right.
It is a right before.
It is a triangle setup choke, or triangle choke setup defense.
Yeah.
Because once that thing is set, like, I'm not saying it's over, that there aren't things that you can do. From a jiu-jitsu standpoint, there's not a whole lot. Like, you're going to tap. From a self-defense standpoint, could I maybe, pull a knife or pull a gun or something? Maybe. I don't know.
That might not save you from the chokes,
but
though.
the odds are, if that thing is locked in, you're going to sleep. So when people post videos about how to defend a triangle or how to defend a rear naked choke or how to defend a guillotine or whatever, they're not really defending that choke. They're defending right before that choke. Yeah.
Right before that arm bar.
Right. So they're not even teaching how to defend from extreme negative.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm looking at and talking about.
Right.
So let's take this from the mats into life. How do we train from negative in life? Do we train from negative in life?
Well, I think a lot of people live from negative. You avoid things and put things off and procrastinate, and you wait until you absolutely have no choice but to address this problem. And odds are by now it's a much bigger problem than it was before, just like in self-defense, right? If we talk about, I don't know, headlock from the side, somebody's going to headlock me. They're going to put their arm around my neck, my head. They're going to try to punch me in the face or take me down or whatever. There were probably 6 or 8 things that transpired before that I could have maybe done and not ended up in a headlock and now being punched in the face or being taken down. But I waited until that last minute. I think life is a lot like that. We see a problem or a potential problem. We see something that is maybe starting to manifest itself in a negative way. And instead of addressing it, we kind of put it off, either because we just want to believe it's not really a problem. It's not really that bad. Just like we do in self-defense. Right? I'll walk out into the parking lot, and I look at my car, and there's dudes hanging around that don't look all that like in place,
Mhm.
like they should be there. And I ignore it, because I'm like, I'm overreacting, whatever. In life, this whether it's work or family or school or whatever, everybody puts things off, and the odds are they don't improve or get better. They at at best they stay the same.
Yeah.
At worst, they get worse. Things exacerbate over time. The more variables you add, and then not only are things worse now because variables have been added over time, but now there's also the added stress of whatever the time crunch that now exists is.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think if you apply either life lessons to self-defense or self-defense to life lessons, I think you're going to find a lot of crossover and parallels there.
There's a mentality too that gets kind of dangerous, I think, where if you are you realize that your behavior in your kid has changed,
Hmm.
and it's just now, maybe you did notice it, but now somebody else has noticed it and said something to you, and in the back of your mind you're thinking, yeah, I noticed that, I wish I had addressed it
Yeah.
before. And you feel like, well, but now we're further along, and what am I going to do? And
Yep.
then 2-3 months, it's shifted, somebody else has noticed it, somebody says something, and you're like, oh man, I really should have dealt with it back then. And
Yep.
so you're adding into this delay.
It's like when somebody sends you a text
Mhm.
and you forget to text them back like 2 or 3 days, and you realize it, and you're like, oh, I need to do that. And then like a week goes by
You
and you
still
haven't done
don't.
it. And then
Yeah.
you're like, well, it's too late now.
Yeah.
It's going to seem ridiculous if I respond now. Or somebody tells you their name, and they've told you a couple times maybe, and you forget. And then, you're a week or 2 or 3 or 5 weeks
Yeah.
later. And now it's like, well, I can't ask them
I
what
can't
their
ask him
name is
now. Like,
now.
yeah.
Again, I mean, I think the more time goes by, the less likely we are to address it, but the more likely it is to be worse.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
So with self defense, I mean, and I get that it's not super sexy to train, pre contact and de escalation and that kind of stuff, and it's it doesn't make for good Instagram reels and YouTube videos or whatever. But the reality is, if as a coach, your job and your goal is to enhance the survivability of your students, and you're not doing that kind of work, I think you're making a huge mistake. I know you're making a huge mistake.
Yeah.
You're constantly forcing your students to ignore situations and opportunities where they could have addressed it before it got to, I'm being headlocked, there's a gun in my face, somebody's pulling a knife, I'm on my back, whatever it is. When maybe I could have just recognized this person's body language from 20 feet away and gone back inside,
Yeah.
and
Well,
it never became a thing at all.
and that seems obvious to, I think, most people looking in, like, well, of course, if you could just walk away or whatever, you should do that. But it's not that obvious, because it comes down to awareness, which is not just a thing that we have. It's a thing that we have to
I
practice and
promise you it's not.
understand.
I promise you it's not out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anytime I teach this kind of stuff and I start talking about body language, or I start talking about what the hands are doing, what the arms are doing, what the eyes are doing, the inflections in the voice, whatever, it's very obvious around the room that people are completely oblivious to these kinds of things. And when you couple that with a heightened adrenal state, a heightened heart rate, all that comes with that, and you're not putting in the time to be able to read the body language, listen to what somebody is saying, formulate a verbal response that's articulate and that makes sense in the context without making it worse, there's a lot to that. And, and maybe coaches don't address it because they don't understand it,
Yeah.
because it's not something that I think some people probably get it because they've lived a life that forced them to do it, but that doesn't mean that they can explain it or coach it or transfer it to somebody else. It's a whole study in and of itself. I mean, there are people that do negotiations and interviews and interrogations and whatever that they spend a lot of time on how to do these things and how to, for lack of a better term, how to manipulate the other person to get the desired result, you know, and then how to know if it's working and if it's not based on their body language, based
Yeah.
on their facial expressions, based on the angle of their body, and if they're closed off or if they're open. And there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into this, and maybe it's not taught. I think part of it's not taught because, again, it's not super cool
Not
to
fun.
to,
It's
to
not
train.
flashy. Yeah.
But I think maybe it's because a lot of people just, from a coaching standpoint, don't understand it. They don't have the ability to teach it to someone else.
Yeah. And they're missing out. Their students are missing out
Yeah.
because even if it's just a little bit here and there as you frame your headlock from the side, it's an important discussion. And most likely, hopefully, most of our students don't have to use the physical skills, and especially if they're good at understanding
Right.
where things can go wrong and how important it is not to use your skills if possible.
Yeah.
They really do need this side of things.
Right.
And then you're left with balancing, okay, well, they're here to get a good workout. So I want them to, we
Mhm.
can't just have conversations and practice sprinting away every class. So
Right.
we have to find this balance. And it's certainly difficult as an instructor. And then, as a school owner, deciding what your coaches need to devote their time to in their classes.
Right. And like, again, I think from a coaching perspective, a center owner perspective, organization, system, whatever. First of all, you have to acknowledge, okay, what is our mission? What is our vision? What are our core values? What are the things that we are trying to do for our community? And if the goal is enhanced survivability, well, the ultimate self defense is to not be there.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Um, and which is why we make a distinction even between self protection and self defense. One being more proactive, one being more reactive. And I also contend that, and I hopefully I will prove this in my session, that this stuff can be fun.
Mhm.
It can be very uncomfortable,
Mhm.
because and I say this a lot, the physical side of what we do is actually pretty easy.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean you can actually pull it off when a violent encounter happens. But in terms of being able to mimic the motions, it's relatively easy.
Yeah.
Learning how to throw a right straight, that's pretty easy. You can get somebody doing that really quickly. Everything else, I think, is the hard part. Should I hit them now? Why should I hit them? What are they doing or saying that leads me to think that maybe I should hit them? Or wait, are they going to hit me now? That, and then the after action. Those things, the things around the physical contact, the things around the actual fight, I think are way more difficult to train and understand and retain than the actual fighting part.
Yeah. And when you think about questions we get from people who ask, well, what should I do if, those types
Yeah.
of questions, especially when we're looking at groups where we're going out to do a one-off, or maybe we have a series of a few seminars, so they're relatively new to what's going on and they're not within our community and kind of living and breathing it a little bit more. The questions tend to be like, if I'm walking and there are some people in a hallway, like, do I look at them and acknowledge them? Do I avoid them?
Right.
That kind of thing,
Right.
rather than, okay, if I'm fighting and somebody's throwing a right straight, should I throw a left kick to the groin? Like,
Yeah.
you get those questions some,
Yeah.
Again, typically geared towards, okay, they're choking me, what do I do, kind of stuff. But you get a lot more of understanding how to engage, when to run, when to
Yeah.
turn and face, and that sort of thing.
And I think this is increasingly true.
Mhm.
When you have a generation or two or three now, I guess, that has built an entire social life and social identity on the internet,
Mhm.
and interpersonal interaction has gone way down. I think it's even much more critical now, because when you're texting somebody, emailing somebody, DMing somebody, even like FaceTime or Zoom or whatever, you don't get the same cues, or any cues in some of those cases,
Yeah.
that you get face to face.
Face-to-face.
Why do I hate phone calls?
So you can't see the other person.
Right. I would rather just text or be in person, because
Yeah.
I want to be able to. You can say things all day long, but it's very difficult for most people, 95% of the population to say something and also that's not true.
Mm-hmm.
And then also make your body lie as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so I don't like phone calls. I want to be able to, now obviously if it's, a quick little whatever, that's fine. But
Pick up bird
if it's an
food.
actual discussion, be able to see them.
Yeah.
I think we are existing in a time where those kind of skills are almost non-existent just because people don't engage and socialize nearly as much in that way.
Yeah, they do so much more on their phones.
I mean, if you look at just how people meet, like dating wise, if you look at the numbers now, like versus 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or whatever, it's almost the huge majority is online.
Yeah.
Huge. Well, I mean, just from that alone, you're talking about I'm meeting somebody and I'm engaging with somebody and I'm going to go out with somebody at some point before I've even had an actual real conversation with them.
Yeah.
You know, and so
we trust.
There's a lot
we
missing
trust a
there.
lot more than we even think or should just by conversations through text or messaging. Yeah.
Yes. And look, it could be a bot for all you like.
Yeah. I mean, look at Tinder swindler and all that kind of stuff out there for sure.
And I know this probably seems like we're way out in left field, but to me, this is self-protection.
Yeah.
Like if I'm meeting somebody online and I'm having 10, 12 conversations with them online, and then I decide to go out with them, well, self-protection would be, all right, well, we're going to get coffee at 9:00 in the morning with a lot of people around.
Right. I'm driving myself.
Because no matter how much I think I know this person based on these 10 or 12 text interactions, online interactions, you don't know this person at all.
Yeah.
And so to me, that's self-protection.
Yes.
I am controlling as many variables as I can on the front end versus, I'm going to have 10 or 12 online conversations with this person and then I'm going to have them pick me up at my house.
Yeah.
Like, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
That's, if you would advise your kid, you would never advise them to do that. I don't think. I sure as hell wouldn't. It just wouldn't make sense. Yeah, you've talked to this person for 10 or 12 times online. Yeah, sure. Have them come pick you up at your apartment. No.
Yeah. You don't know this person.
No, at all.
So what we're talking about is the argument to not spend the majority of your time training from negative because it's going to be so much more important to understand the training from positive side, the preemption side, the proactive side of this.
Variable control, all those things. Yeah.
So if we do end up in a bad spot and devoting some training time to bad positions is still important.
Sure.
How do we frame those conversations?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in our center organization system, whatever, we prioritize learning to fight. Right. And I think if you learn how to fight from all ranges, you get really good at being able to mitigate the physical relatively early. From day one, people in our classes are pummeling and doing arm drags and, head clears and biceps pummeling and these kinds of things where even if you just look at an arm drag or a bicep pummel, this is as somebody looks to try to grab me or looks to try to reach out to me. I'm already intercepting that. I'm already looking to deal with it before they get body locked. And if they get body locked, well, what's the technique for it? Well, right now we're just pummeling. Like I'm looking to get inside grips, inside controls, as opposed to, okay, stand still and I'm going to get double overs with your arms caught. No, that if you learn how to fight, you'll be able to, and again, look, everybody can be surprised. Everybody can be caught off guard.
Things happen.
Can happen.
We have allowance for that.
I don't mean it to say like, you're going to be invincible and you're not ever going to get put in a worst case scenario.
Yeah.
But the better you are at fighting, the least likely you are to end up in those worst case scenarios.
The better off the more chances you have to mitigate the situation as it continues to unfold.
Right.
Which is, again, the whole premise of this podcast is it's not necessarily the plan you create, it's the planning.
Right.
Having done the planning, you have ability to continue to fix things and adjust before things get really, really bad.
Right. I mean, it would be like saying, well, if somebody's a really good swimmer, they can never drown. No, of course they can.
Yeah.
But if they're a really good swimmer, they are less likely than somebody that can't swim.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Like, so if you become a good fighter, a decent fighter, doesn't mean you can't lose. It doesn't mean you can't be beaten. It doesn't mean you can't be caught off guard or whatever, but you are much better prepared than somebody that can't fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So as we have kind of made this progression between preemption to this middle ground of fighting, keeping it from getting worse. And then, like you said, things can happen and you end up in these bad spots. So I feel like there are maybe two at least clear paths in these situations, where one is you were surprised, you're caught off guard, here we are, let's fix it. And then maybe another one where there's, in a training sense, there's benefit to thinking, okay, well, how did we get here?
Yep.
What put us here? What did we miss that we ended up here? So that now we're going to fight from it, but we're also going to understand where there are opportunities to not end up here, right?
When I teach modern Krav Maga, I almost always reverse engineer my class.
Yep.
Right. We might end up in escaping from mount, but we didn't start there. We probably pummeled. We probably did arm drags. We probably got to body locks at some point. We probably looked at defending the body lock, defending the takedown. We probably looked at being taken down and not allowing the top person to settle into a position and being able to escape from there. And then ultimately we get to this kind of, okay, I am mounted. Maybe I'm being punched. How do I deal with it? But we didn't start there.
Right.
Because my premise is, if we just say, all right, everybody, we're going to work mount escapes today. And I'm talking about from a self-defense standpoint. I'm not talking about jiu-jitsu or whatever. Though that's a whole other thing. I will say that this, somebody posted a video just recently and I meant to share it and then I couldn't find it. And the premise of the video was how jiu-jitsu is no longer a great base for MMA. And I 100% agree with this, because the problem with modern jiu-jitsu is, I just saw two high-level guys this week in a competition. They touched hands and they both sat straight to their ass.
Yep. Where they'll stay for like 7 minutes.
You cannot do that in MMA.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have takedowns and you don't have good takedown defense and you can't strike, you're not ready for MMA. Yeah. So you're certainly not ready for self-defense, and so the idea of where 20, 30 years ago, jiu-jitsu being the preeminent base for MMA, it is no longer that. I think it's one of the worst now to have as a base. You have to be able to do jiu-jitsu. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, it's part of it.
Right. But I don't think it's probably top 5, but it's not top 3 that you should have. And so when it comes to self-defense and teaching people how to deal with worst case scenarios, I think if you just come in and you're like, all right, we're going to work on mount escapes today. Everybody get on your back, partners get on top. We deal with mount escapes. And I'm not saying your partners or your students won't be able to escape mount, but they probably won't be able to, not really, because they don't really understand either side, top or bottom. They don't really understand the grappling sensibilities that are required to do it. They're just learning a set of steps, Yeah. And as soon as that top person doesn't react in the way that you're prescribing to them right now, they're going to be screwed. And now they're getting punched in the face, their head's bouncing off the asphalt or whatever. If you teach them a progression, how did we get here? And what could we have done to mitigate that? One, again, you're much less likely to end up there in the first place. But 2, you have a much better understanding of what is required to actually put you in this position, and having the sensibilities from both sides on how to actually deal with it, as opposed to just memorizing a set of techniques. There are steps, right? You have to teach steps. I think, I don't want to get into the whole ecological and, all of that.
Yeah.
I think ecological has its place, but progressive resistance does as well. And you need to teach people stages of how to do stuff. And then you can kind of let it be a little more free flowing. I
do think the lesson plans, at least for modern Krav Maga, the way we teach self-defense, lend themselves to be better in that nature, because we, at some point when you look in, it's a giant open space and we're punching on a pad or doing a technique against the thing. But within a class, we can add more variables and pull it out of the vacuum and lead them down different paths that they have to kind of figure out and find on their own. Because when the choke was somebody just standing in front of you with their hands on their neck, it happened a little bit differently than it was after you punched them or they tried to body lock you first or headlock you, and then it turned into a choke. And so we can do that within our training, and we do that within our modern Krav Maga system lesson planning, because I know system probably just was nails on a chalkboard. Okay. But then I don't, in more traditional jujitsu schools, I mean, I think we run jujitsu the same way anyway, but a lot of other jujitsu schools that I see that are on more of the beaten path, it's very much, this is the position we're working from, this is the move we're learning, and that's it for drilling. Okay, touch hands, now go try to make it happen. And there's no middle ground between absolutely nothing, static vacuum environment, and live. But that middle ground is where you can actually learn to apply.
Yeah. I've been, in my jiu-jitsu classes, I've been teaching some foot sweeps from standing. And I taught this again last night in Charlotte. And there's a guy in there that has competed a lot and won a lot and came from another school. And we've been hitting a little bit more unorthodox foot sweeps, I think, at least last night we did. And he was like, man, this is great. We never looked at anything like this, and it was, again, we started with drags and head clears and pummeling and biceps pummeling and whatever. And we went from those things and using those things to set up foot sweeps, and then using foot sweeps to set up dominant top positions, as opposed to, all right, well, now you got side control. What are you going to do from here?
Yeah. Starting their guard and pass or whatever.
How did we get here? I mean, I understand in jiu-jitsu how you get the guard. You both just sit the fuck down. But like in a fight, that's just not how it goes.
Yeah.
And in MMA, at least with UFC rules, if we touch the hands and you sit, I'm just going to back up and the ref's going to make you stand up.
Yeah.
There is no.
There's a spectacle. There's a sport to it.
That's not that's not gonna work.
Yeah.
And in jiu-jitsu competitions, you can maybe get away with that, but. And then if if it was the old Pride days, you could get kicked in the face if you did that. You didn't see anybody pulling guard there.
Yeah.
So,
did I tell you we had somebody reach out? It was maybe a month or so ago. I don't think he ever ended up coming in, and it was a guy who trains jujitsu. I don't know where, but somewhere. And he was asking me about Krav Maga, and I was like, well, this is our approach in the classes or whatever. And I'm like, why, what are your goals? Why are you interested in it? And he said, well, I'm looking for more takedowns for jujitsu. And I was like, you should try our jujitsu class to get takedowns for jujitsu. Yeah. I was very confused. I mean, I wasn't, but I'm like, your experience is not everybody's experience. Like what you think is jujitsu is not necessarily jujitsu. Right. So,
but I do think it's more common
that you don't see.
That you don't see a lot of takedowns in jiu-jitsu.
No, and then when
because
you're
the rule says
they don't reward it.
When you've got two high-level dudes that touch hands and immediately sit to their ass, that tells you all you need to know about what the current state of competitive jiu-jitsu is. And look, there are some competitive jiu-jitsu guys out there that would mollywop me. I'm not saying that it doesn't have a place and that there aren't really good guys out there. However, in a fight, life on the line, that shit ain't gonna fly.
Yeah. It's
first of all, if you sit down, I'm just gonna walk away. So sweet.
So good. We're done.
Game over, right? Because again, if we talk about not training from extreme negative all the time, well, if your go-to is to pull guard, well, awesome, because I'm gonna walk. I'm not gonna engage.
Yeah.
And look, I know. Because people are going to say, well, nobody's teaching to pull guard in a street fight. Well, first of all, I wouldn't say nobody.
I was about to say, they're out there.
And secondly, okay, then what are you teaching?
Because if you are
for self-defense, right?
Yeah, because if you're not teaching takedowns and control and clinch, then yes, you are. Basically, you're teaching them to be put to the ground.
Well, because here's the Krav Maga problem. Well, we're teaching people how to deal with, they're on their back, somebody's in their guard, it's a sexual assault situation. Okay. But how did we get here? And why aren't we addressing that? Why aren't we addressing not being in this place? And look, I totally understand it. If you are a straight up jiu-jitsu person in 2025 and you did not come up in a jiu-jitsu system that taught takedowns and takedown defense and being punched and those kinds of things, fine. Okay. But acknowledge that. Don't say self-defense for women and that you're going to cover these 10 concepts and principles, but really you're just going to look at throwing an armbar from guard or simple sweep from guard or something like that.
Yeah.
Be honest about it.
Yeah.
And same thing for Krav Maga. I like, or any of them. I don't care. If you're going to do boxing for self-defense, fine. But be honest about what that means and what that looks like. Because
and what you're ignoring
boxing for self-defense and you are walking to your car and somebody body locks you from behind, well, what's the boxing response to that?
The ref breaks you up. So no.
So what are we teaching?
The honesty element of it for what you're doing and for what your sport is, I think is what we're getting to. Okay. So I want to close out this progression that we've looked at to time and place of, I guess, learning from past mistakes and time and place of this is where I am, let's go. And this exists on the mats and it exists in life. You end up with upside down on your mortgage and you owe money on credit cards. There's a time that you need to sit and think, how did I get here?
Yeah.
Right. But then there's also a time where it's like, okay, well, I'm here now. So let's build out, let's fix
deal with where we are.
Yeah.
And self-defense is the same. I'm gonna potentially find myself in some really bad places, whether that's, credit card debt or whether that's being on my back in a parking lot. And there's a time to be retrospective and look at what did I do that put me here. But like in the case of upside down credit cards or whatever, let's deal with that part first. Let's make the call to the credit card company and see if we can get the interest rate down. Let's, those kinds of things. And then we can talk about budgeting for the future and whatever.
Yeah.
If I find myself on my back in a parking lot, well, now's not the time to think, damn,
what did I
should
miss?
have. Why didn't I? No, you have to deal with this person's about to cave your face in, and then you can always go back to your instructor later and be like, why the fuck didn't you teach me how to defend takedowns?
Yeah.
So
that's, competition. When you're in it, you end up in a bad spot. Now's not the time to think about what you missed or wonder why you didn't know how to get out of whatever. You're fighting.
Your coach can't be yelling at you about things that you don't know.
Right. Yeah.
It's not the time. If I'm in your corner and as a coach, I know
octopus sweep,
whatever, but I know you don't know it.
Yeah.
There's no value in me yelling that at you right now.
Yeah.
I can meet you where you are.
Right.
Because that's all you have. That's all you're going to be able to do.
Yeah.
And then we can go back and after the fact, once you are no longer pissed and annoyed and whatever, then we can go back and look at, all right, well, this is what could have happened. This is what maybe we should have done, and here's some other options from the position that you ended up in.
Then game plan for next time. Right. When we look at that in a self-defense structure, people will come to us, they've had something happen and they want to ask, this is what I did. Did I do it right? And you're like, yeah, you're here talking to me, asking that question. Yes. What you did was right.
Right.
Were there things that could have been done better? Like, are you going to learn some opportunities that you missed?
Right.
Absolutely. But you survived that encounter. Yeah. I don't want to discredit that. You were in a bad position and you fought from it.
Well, my response is generally, well, what was the goal? Okay. Well, what was the result?
Yeah.
Okay. Then who cares how we got there?
Right.
If there was something about the engagement that bothers you, okay, we can look at that. We can talk about that. We can maybe see about some better options or whatever. But at the end of the day, man, if the goal is to escape pretty unscathed, and I did that, then I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on micro analyzing the minutia of all of the shit that I could have done differently.
Yeah, I agree. I think that I know that trips a lot of people up coming into it. Yeah. And I get it. There's probably a control factor where they want to take back some control.
Sure.
But also the reality of you needing to be prepared for that exact same situation to happen again,
Almost zero.
zero. Unless it's something that you are actively putting yourself in that
Right.
situation, in
And
which
then
case,
that's the self-protection part of
right?
things.
Yeah, let's
Let's
fix
change
that.
behaviors.
Yes, yeah.
You know.
Let's not be around those people.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, no, the other kind of on that same vein is people, well, what could I have done differently? Well, I don't know
yeah.
because
I wasn't there. I
I
didn't feel
wasn't
it. I
there.
didn't.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and what I would have done is irrelevant.
right.
I can give you some basic concepts and principles, but I'm not going to fight like you. I'm not going to move like you. We don't have the same experiences and life and whatever. In my jiu-jitsu class last night, I was teaching those foot sweeps, and I was teaching one that pretty much required you. And this is the problem with a lot of takedowns is, and where not the problem with takedowns, the problem with people trying to perform takedowns is you have to commit.
Yeah,
You know, and one of the partner groups, one guy was 130 pounds, and one guy was 215, and we don't work in weight classes or anything. I mean, if I think there's a safety issue, obviously I'll move people around,
yeah,
but that wasn't the case here. And the smaller guy was struggling with the takedown, and it was immediately obvious to me what the problem was, because technically he was doing it right, but he wasn't committing. He wasn't at that moment in time either willing or understanding that he was going to have to
go
send his
100
body,
plus percent. Yeah, yeah.
because it was an attachment, whereas from a 2-on-1, a Russian tie, and he needed to put all of his weight on that arm, that
Yeah,
limb.
yeah.
And if he didn't, there's no way he's going to pull down a guy that's,
Almost twice
85
the size. Yeah,
pounds heavier than him.
yeah,
With all of these things, it's like technique matters, but so much of it is a mentality about, and an understanding and an ownership of the concepts and principles that guide the techniques. And with a takedown, especially if you're coming from a jiu-jitsu program or system that's not doing a lot of takedowns or not spending much time on takedowns or self-defense for
hmm
that matter, because
yeah,
most self-defense systems aren't spending a lot of time on takedowns, or they might say they defend takedowns, but what does that really look like?
yeah.
Because if your partner can't do a takedown, what does your takedown
Your
how
defense look
how
like?
how
Yeah,
good is your
yeah,
actual takedown
yeah,
defense?
yeah,
um, so if that's the case, then it's going to be much more difficult to get to that place of understanding how to reverse engineer and progress these things
yeah.
effectively.
Well, and on the weight difference too, there's no. We talk all the time in self defense. There's no like warning shots. You're going,
Hmm.
and by necessity to train and keep training partners and still keep ourselves safe. If
Hmm.
something happened outside of the training center, we can't just go ape shit on our partner and
Right.
100%. But then when you look at something like a takedown, there's no like, well, I want to be careful. I don't want to hurt them when you're giving up 85 pounds.
Right.
You have to go all in,
Right.
and otherwise you're just not going to do it at all.
Right.
And so there's an almost a dissonance there of, well, I'm training, I'm not supposed to go as hard as I can, but this doesn't work if I don't go as hard as I can.
Yeah. Well, and again, like once you have a good technical understanding of the moves and movements on both sides, the person doing the takedown, the person being taken down, then you understand better about how to protect you and how to protect your partner. You know,
Right.
um, even with a weight disparity, like, because on the flip side of that, you got somebody 215 pounds taking down somebody 130 pounds, and he could probably do it 70% wrong and still make the takedown work,
Yeah.
but he's got to be able to do it in a way that doesn't injure his partner over and over and over again. So there's going to be there has to be some give and take there. The the padded suit thing, like one of the comments that I got was, okay, well, how do you go hard without this giant suit on? I was like, well, look, man, so first of all, only one side's going hard,
Yeah.
because the dude in the suit is a zombie tin
Yeah.
man.
Can barely move,
Like,
can't actually affect anything.
he's not doing anything hard.
Yeah.
I promise. He can't.
Yeah.
He cannot. He can't move. He's like the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. Like it
Yeah.
just doesn't work. And two, combat sports do it all day, every day.
Hmm.
There's a progressive way to train with good intensity and still keeping people safe, but it's still training. Like,
Yeah.
we're we're not ever touching hands, and no gloves, no shins, no
Trying to-
mouthpieces, and just trying to beat the shit out of each other.
Yeah.
That's dumb.
Yeah.
Right? If the goal of training is to enhance your life and enhance your survivability and keep you from getting injured, why the fuck would you do that in training?
Yeah. You're going to walk out that door less
Way
safe.
more injured than you, because odds of you being attacked are infinitesimal, but you actually going to a place where you're signing up to be attacked is crazy.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But people want to create these false dichotomies. Well, you either, it's either no contact or we're beating shit out of each other.
Yeah.
No, that's not true at all. And if you look at some of the best fight camps now, hard sparring is super rare because it's just not long-term sustainable.
Right.
And in our industry, our centers, whatever, we're not working with people that are fighting for a living.
Yeah.
Like we've got doctors and lawyers and accountants and people that work from home, or people that, just are there to get into shape and maybe learn a little something, whatever. We would have no members if we just hard sparred all the time.
Yeah.
Besides the fact that it's just not effective.
Right.
For what we're trying to do.
And it's still training from negative. You
Yes.
don't want to end up in a fight with this person.
Right.
Definitely not a fair one, but you don't want to be trading shot for shot.
I mean, we spar. Like, we spar a lot. I shouldn't say ever, but almost never teach a sparology class without ending with sparring. And that's if you're there for your first night. But there are a lot of things in place to keep people safe. The first time you learn to drive, you're not hitting 85 out on the interstate, you know?
Yeah. All right.
Okay.
I feel like we could go a whole different way with the car training from negative.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. That's our look at training from negative. If you enjoyed this podcast, like, subscribe, follow, engage on Instagram, social media, Spotify, YouTube, all that kind of stuff. If you didn't enjoy it, overreact, still comment everywhere, share it with all your friends, tell them how terrible it is. And we look forward to growing with you next time.
And it's not too late to sign up for Hard Ready. Just saying.
That's true. Fit2Fight.com. Let's go.
Thanks, everybody.